Alright, so I recently finished playing through Ninja Gaiden Sigma, particularly the Master Collection Switch Edition. Got some pre-recorded footage here in the background of me messing around in the mission and survival modes while we talk about it. This is a game going in that I did have a little bit of a history with. Probably about 5 to 10 years ago, I found out that Dead or Alive wasn't just a booba volleyball game and a solid 3D fighter similar to Virtua Fighter, which I was really craving at the time in the middle of the big drought that series was having. And I felt like after getting into that series, like playing some Ninja Gaiden seemed like a natural choice, given Ryu appears as a major character in those games. Some other characters from Ninja Gaiden are in Dead or Alive as well. So I wound up picking up Sigma 1 and 2 for the PS Vita. Didn't even really intend for them to be in my backlog. I wound up diving in immediately. But for some reason at the time, with life and games, I was kind of in a save the best for last zone. So I thought it was a good idea to start off with the mission and survival maps, then conclude with story mode. Bad idea, don't do that. That wound up pretty much killing all of my excitement to play the games at that time, which wasn't really rekindled until they announced the fourth game and the new remake of the second one. And yeah, here we are now. I'm honestly kind of conflicted with the game though. Like overall, it's fine, but I felt like it always seemed a little off. And I was more excited about potential future experiences with the series as opposed to what I just experienced, if that makes any sense. For example, the platforming. I really liked the approach that they were seeming to take, particular with a focus on wall running. I felt like it seemed fitting, seemed unique. You don't see a lot of platforming games sort of focus on that. But then I felt like besides the tutorial level, for the first half of the game, they didn't really utilize it a lot in the core gameplay outside of secret areas or collectibles. And then when they did utilize it more, like I'm thinking of a particular level about halfway through the game where you're infiltrating a military base and you go in this warehouse and you kind of have to platform from one top level to another, and then I just remember getting really frustrated and annoyed rather than having fun because I didn't feel like the input was as precise as I wanted or expected. Like I feel like a lot of the time I would be trying to run across a wall, but I would be running up instead, or I would be overshooting a jump that I didn't feel like I really should have been overjumping. And then that warehouse in particular introduced some drones that were shooting at you when you're trying to go through all of that. So my wish wound up backfiring there a bit. And then around the same point in the game, I feel like some of the exploration got weaker until the last level or two. Because I feel like it was really good early in the game as well. Like I say a lot of the time, I don't like repeating myself, backtracking, and that sort of thing. And this game has that, but it does a good job with it to where I don't mind. They'll introduce new mobs or just enemy variety to take down when you return to an area, as well as different shortcuts that make it, really quick and feel different because you're using a new ability or something. So I wound up not really minding it, but then later in the game, I'm thinking of two levels in particular. There's one level where you're going back and forth between a lava and ice cave that gets really repetitive. And then I think, maybe the level after, maybe a level or two later, you kind of go through a combination of a lot of the previous levels, but once again, you had already kind of seen these shortcuts, and the enemy variety didn't seem as strong, to the point where, those were some of the weaker levels in the game, to say the least, for me. One thing I really liked, though, was hero mode. I know that might be a bit of a controversial take. I know some people are really against that sort of inclusion. But for people who just don't have time to really learn the game's systems, or just in general suck at video games, it's nice. Like, I wouldn't say I completed the game in a traditional sense, but it's still nice to experience everything that the game had to offer. And they did it a really good way, I feel like, too. I'm not saying it's uniquely done. It's the first time I've seen it, but I don't know if this type of approach was taken, before or after. But you essentially, when you hit under a certain amount of health, enter an invincibility mode. But it's for a limited time, and you'll kind of see that certain enemies will drop blue orbs, which will instantly replenish your health. So then you have an opportunity to build it back up outside of hero mode, or to at least reset your counter if you're really struggling. And I really liked all of that. I definitely challenged myself to avoid hero mode as much as possible, and I took some risks. I'm pretty stingy when it comes to my different resources, so, my timer is running out. Do I think I'm about to get a health drop and can avoid using, the health potion in my inventory? And sometimes it worked out, sometimes it didn't. And, I did see some improvement, too. I'm still, as you can tell, not very good at the game, but, I'm thinking of one monster in particular. It has a bunch of eyes and 2 tentacle hands. I remember really struggling the first time I faced that enemy, but I know there was a challenge mode, and you don't have access to hero mode in the challenge mission maps or survival mode, as you may have noticed the gameplay footage as I struggle. I hated those different archers when you were trying to platform, and they were pretty tough, but yeah, you might see a bit more of a struggle with this map in the background. But that particular monster, I was able to do the challenge mode map against it without hero mode. So that was kind of cool to see that kind of progress too. Like I said, you can't kind of, just go brain dead and spam healing items and that, but I just like using it as an opportunity to learn and to avoid. The story in this game was honestly nothing really notable at all. I do want to talk about 2 particular characters who appeared, though. First, Rachel. I'm not going to lie, I was pretty disappointed in Rachel. I felt like her personality and story events were kind of boring. It felt like they were trying to go a mix of damsel in distress and badass warrior. It just didn't really work that well for me. Hopefully they sort of change it up the best they can. I'm pretty sure she appears in, the later games here. And even her gameplay, Ryu has all of this gameplay variety with several different weapons. She essentially is just one weapon that Ryu doesn't have, and with weaker upgrades that break apart some of that momentum you were having from the different upgrades you were finding in that, And then there was also Ayane, who I'm familiar with through Dead or Alive. Rachel appears too, but Ayane's a major character in Dead or Alive, and to tell you the truth, I never really liked Ayane too much. I feel like she's got a really cool design, but I felt like some of the other ninja-themed characters their play styles were a bit better for me. And I haven't played through, the stories in those games in a long time, but if I remember correctly, Ayane was kind of, at least in the earlier games, I think they did get better as the series went on, but I kind of remembered her being kind of whiny and annoying and obsessed with her siblings being her, main personality, but here they give her sort of a narrator, know-it-all, outside force role, which I did like better. At the same time, I do acknowledge that, especially at the time that the game came out, that this may have been pretty out of character, if my memory serves me correctly. I mean, the one thing I don't know, too, is that Sigma is a remake. Maybe that, and even stuff like Hero Mode didn't come until the remake. So that might be, noteworthy parts that, may change certain opinions for different editions and that. But yeah, like I said at the beginning of all of this, I feel like at the end, I'm just more excited to dive into Ninja Gaiden 2. Even though I have Sigma 2, I want to play Black 2, I feel like. But I don't know what to do there. I don't know if I want to wait for a good Steam sale or just get Game Pass for like a month as long as it's on there. Hopefully it's sooner rather than later. I know how distracted I can get, especially if I'm already sort of having a potential decision paralysis-esque approach to how I finally play Ninja Gaiden 2 Black, but we'll see.